What would drive someone to throw away an old man's cane, a lifeline for his fragile steps, into the cold grip of a trash bin? In the quiet town of Willow Creek, where neighbors waved from porches and the scent of blooming Karen flowers vibrant, wild, and untamed filled the air, a single act of spite set off a chain of events that would unravel secrets, expose hearts, and leave scars no one could have foreseen. Karen Mitchell was no stranger to controversy. At 42, she wore her sharp tongue like a badge of honor, her voice cutting through the town's harmony like a knife through silk. Her sleek blonde hair and perfectly pressed blouses gave her an air of authority, but her neighbors knew better. Karen was the woman who complained about untidy lawns, barking dogs, and children's laughter that dared to echo past dusk. Her latest target was Old Man Jenkins, an 82-year-old widower whose slow shuffle and weathered cane had become a fixture on Maple Street. His Karen flowers, a riot of crimson and gold, spilled over his fence, their beauty a quiet rebellion against Karen's need for order. "Why does he let those weeds overrun everything?" Karen muttered one crisp autumn morning, glaring at Jenkins' garden from her pristine porch. The flowers, named for their fierce resilience, seemed to mock her. She'd filed complaints with the town council, demanded Jenkins trim them back, but he'd only smiled, his eyes crinkling with a warmth that infuriated her. "They're just flowers, Karen," he'd said, leaning on his cane. "They've got a right to grow wild." That day something snapped. Maybe it was the way Jenkins tipped his hat to her, or the way his cane tapped rhythmically against the sidewalk, a sound that grated on her nerves. Karen watched him hobble toward the community center, where the annual Harvest Festival was being planned. The town buzzed with excitement booths, music, and the crowning of the Karen Blossom Queen, a tradition celebrating the flower that defined Willow Creek's spirit. Karen, banned from the planning committee after last year's outburst over balloon colors, seethed at her exclusion. And Jenkins, with his gentle smile and beloved garden, was at the heart of it all. She didn't plan it, not really. But when she saw Jenkins' cane leaning against a bench outside the community center, unattended while he chatted inside, her anger took over. With a glance to ensure no one was watching, Karen grabbed the cane, its wood worn smooth by years of use, and marched to the nearest dumpster. The metal lid clanged as she tossed it in, the sound swallowed by the rustle of leaves. She dusted her hands, a smirk curling her lips. "Let's see him shuffle now," she whispered. By noon, the town was in an uproar. Jenkins, panicked and unsteady, had nearly fallen searching for his cane. His daughter, Lila, a soft-spoken librarian with a fierceness that surprised everyone, confronted Karen in the town square. "You were seen, Karen?" Lila said, her voice trembling with rage. "Mrs. Delaney saw you near the dumpster. How could you?" Karen's face flushed, but she stood her ground. "I didn't touch his stupid stick. Maybe he misplaced it. Old people do that, you know." Her defiance only fueled the crowd's anger. Mrs. Delaney, a wiry woman with a knack for noticing everything, stepped forward, her eyes sharp. "I saw you, Karen Mitchell, clear as day. You threw it in the trash like it was nothing." The truth hit like a storm. Jenkins, leaning on Lila's arm, looked at Karen with eyes that held no anger, only sorrow. "That cane," he said softly, "was my father's. He carved it himself before he passed. It's all I have left of him." The crowd gasped, and Karen felt the weight of their stares. For the first time, her sharp tongue failed her. The town council acted swiftly. Karen was fined $500 for vandalism and banned from all community events for a year, a punishment that stung more than the money. The Harvest Festival, the bake-offs, the summer fair should be an outcast, watching from the sidelines. But the real punishment was the silence. Neighbors who once nodded politely now turned away. Children whispered as she passed. Even her own sister, Marie, a nurse who'd always defended her, shook her head. "You went too far, Karen. This isn't about flowers or rules. It's about kindness." But the story didn't end there. Enter Tommy Ruiz, a lanky teenager who'd moved to Willow Creek just months before. Quiet and unassuming, he spent his days sketching in a tattered notebook, unnoticed by most. Tommy had a secret. He'd seen more than Mrs. Delaney that day. From the alley behind the community center, he'd watched Karen toss the cane, but he'd also seen what happened next. A man someone Tommy didn't recognize had lingered near the dumpster, his face hidden under a baseball cap. When Karen walked away, he'd reached in, pulled out the cane, and slipped it into a duffel bag before vanishing into the crowd. Tommy hadn't told anyone. He was new, still finding his place, and didn't want trouble. But guilt gnawed at him. Jenkins' grief, Lila's fury, the town's outragite all weighed on him. One evening, as the Karen flowers glowed under the sunset, Tommy knocked on Jenkins' door. His hands shook as he handed over his sketchbook, open to a detailed drawing of the man with the cane. "I saw him take it," Tommy admitted. "I should have said something sooner." Jenkins studied the sketch, his fingers tracing the lines. The man's features were vague, but the cap had a logo, a red hawk, unmistakable. "That's from the old mill," Jenkins said, his voice steady but laced with something darker. "Only one person still wears that cap." He didn't name him, but Lila's eyes widened. She knew. The man was Victor Hayes, a former council member who'd left town years ago after a scandal involving stolen funds. He'd been Jenkins' friend once, until greed tore them apart. Hayes had returned quietly, blending into the festival crowds, nursing a grudge against Jenkins for exposing his crimes. The cane wasn't just a theft, it was revenge. Hayes had planned to sell it, knowing its sentimental value, to hurt Jenkins where it stung most. Lila and Tommy took the sketch to the police. By dawn, Hayes was found at a motel on the edge of town, the cane still in his bag. The town reeled at the twist. Karen's act, cruel as it was, had been a spark, but Hayes had fanned it into something uglier. The cane was returned to Jenkins, polished and whole, but the damage was done. Karen's fine stood, her ban unchanged. Hayes faced charges, his name a stain on Willow Creek's memory. At the Harvest Festival, the Karen flowers stole the show, their petals bright against the gray of regret. Jenkins, leaning on his cane, crowned the blossom queen, a shy girl named Ellie, who'd planted Karen's seeds in her own yard to honor him. The crowd cheered, but Karen watched from her window, the laughter a bitter echo. She'd wanted control, order, perfection. Instead, she'd lost everything: her place, her pride, her sister's trust. Jenkins visited her the next day. He stood on her porch, his cane tapping softly. "I forgive you, Karen," he said, his voice steady. "But you've got to forgive yourself. Those flowers out there, they grow through cracks. Maybe you can too." He left a single Karen bloom on her doorstep, its crimson petals stark against the wood. Karen stared at it, tears burning her eyes. She wanted to pick it up, to feel its fragile strength, but her hands wouldn't move. The flower lay there, a reminder of what she'd broken, what she'd lost. The town moved on, the Karen flowers bloomed, and Karen remained, trapped in the cage of her own making, the weight of her actions heavier than any fine. Nd.